I wrote this down before I even decided on a topic, before I feel the Lord led me to say, we should talk about this tonight. We are alive, but life with a capital L, as in the way, the truth, the life, is Jesus Christ, Messiah, and his adopted are bound to warn. We're bound to warn that no person enters the kingdom of heaven except through Jesus Christ, not one person. Not even going to debate that topic, that we are alive, but life with a capital L is Christ Jesus Messiah, and his adopted are bound to warn. No person enters the kingdom of heaven except through Jesus Christ, and that entails his sacrifice, his rising, knowing him. His word is written on your heart. That topic's not up for debate. And now I don't think should be debatable either. The hidden hand, the hidden hand, they stick it in their coat. It's been a part of my life. I noticed it. I started history early, so it would have still been in the early to mid 60s probably when I noticed it. The hidden hand that rocked the cradle used aquatafina, a very deadly poison, to kill their husbands while controlling the offspring the same way. Are not women, whatever that means to you, are not women, whatever that means to you, owner of an equally wicked heart as their male counterpart? Now that rhymes, and that rhymes on purpose, and it's a real question. Our history, I mean, it has, what's that 180? It's flipped over now, right? It used to be patriarchy is bad. And so now men are bad because they did patriarchy and held back women. When the overall history that we know is that every culture, whether it is the Bible, and I'm not going to, don't say Confucius and Hindu and stuff like that, the the Persians, the Medes, the Sidonians, the Assyrians, the people that were in the Bible, all of those people left records, and they had patriarchies. The there's a few. They'll go like, well, there's this one tribe, and we discovered them, and they had women in charge. Not too much. Not too much. It's good to see you, Sergio. You got here a little bit at 10:58. There were 4 people here, but it they found out it was going to be like a male centric. Women were. I said the hand that rocked the cradle, because women are Freemasons too, and for some reason there's been a rash in my. I even did a show on it a couple of months ago, and it hasn't slowed down. I did this from memory. I pulled up the tabs later. I even spelled it right. Aquatofina. It was a cosmetic that they sold to women in Rome, and it said, "Don't use this. It's poison." So they were poisoning their husbands, and That and with the thumbnail, I just feel like it's got to be said. Does the golden age past? Has it jumped the shark? I mean, I remember when it first started, and we go like, well, there's going to be denominations, and people are going to be talking about it. But every time I've said, unless you're willing to debate me in a fair and honest way, and not one person in these 7.5, 8 years has said, I'd love to debate you. But is the short season everywhere around the disc of the flat earth? Yeah, I don't want RJ to hear this later and said, you said globe, because I don't, around the world is something I probably said a million times. That's probably an exaggeration, but not too much. I don't think I have too many pictures, but we'll check them out. Hey, there's the Masters of Alchemy. It wasn't that long ago. Remember, they added 1,000 years, take away 1,000 years from the golden age that they hid and covered up. They were turning snakes into raw pieces of wood into snakes. So there we go. Look at that handshake. You know, I didn't bother looking for any women. This just popped up, and I was just going like, that's not it. That's not how men are taught to shake hands until they go into the Freemasons. My dad taught me how to shake hands, and it wasn't like that. Hey, I guess there really was an Operation Carnivore. They just spy on everybody because there's people out there that they sell your social security number on the dark web and do all kinds of nefarious, craziest. Uh, Carnivore's first action was to take a glimpse, but I kind of followed it. It's everything from fake credit cards to the Pizzagate and everything in between it. But Carnivore, they have 40 million packets, and they spied on everybody because they were looking for 300 people that called the phone number that the FBI set up. They said, let's set it up and see if anybody calls this number. And so they swept the whole world to see who called that number. 300 people did. And they all got a malware. How do you like that? They didn't like it, I bet. So here's the Irish. Is this the mob or is this the? Oh, this is the FBI servers. Marquis allegedly dove for his laptop when the police raided him. Those hackers, those dark webbers. Whoa! I saw this because that's a thumbnail screen shot from Shelley's No Place Like Home narrative, question the narrative videos. I added this verbiage: golden age past, mud flood theology, the short season. It's a fun place for speculation about vampires and werewolves. That's what we've seen the last couple of days. And you may think that's super cool. I myself am in a I mean, I feel what Paul said when he feels like I myself am under the constant anxiety for the church. I remember when this was growing, my ministry, and we were the ones talking about it, and the Stones were crying out. And I had just came back. I had rescued Noah Church. He was stranded because he went with a group of people that left him at a hippie convention, and I brought him back with Tommy, and he was gathering phone numbers, and we were going to have a chats, and they this and that, and work together and everything else. But he was really doing it because he was, well, it turned out to be an obvious lie that my family didn't love me and that we weren't happy and everything else. But a lot of people believed it, and all those numbers went away. But the message went out. I started another channel because YouTube has copyright problems and medical issues. They thought I was a doctor when I never thought I was a doctor. I always showed that little thing, but I guess they did it to everybody. But it's God that teach patience. We all have patience. I know for sure the veil has been lifted. I know the whole movement. I remember when Conspiracy R Us left video comments on my videos before he started making videos. I know the whole timeline. I know that when I was a child and saw the hand in the coat pictures, my dad ending up, didn't even know I knew trigonometry till I took a test to go into the army because we were hostages. 400 hostages were taken by Iran, and they said, "Wow, you want to be a surveyor?" And I go, "Is that good? Sounds good to me. Wasn't that what Thomas Jefferson and those guys did?" They go, "Yeah, you can do it." I go, like, "Well, let's do it." So I did it, and it was good. Anyway, it was fun to learn, and I ended up working on the parallel azimuth direction system that turned into GPS. Ended up working for a group, the largest homeschool company in the world, where I worked my way up to administrator, athletic director, and then found out it was ran by the John Birch Society and the mafia, and that everything is a setup. I wear this one bracelet. The rest of these are medicines, magnets, copper, silver, and gold to work your blood because I care about my health and I plan on living. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. And I am going to treat women like men and expect men and women to listen to the Bible, not the pre mud flood was Armageddon world before when the veil was lifted. You want to call it golden age past, the short season, mud flood was Armageddon, premillennialism. That's the theology that people should care about. And it says things are going to get a lot worse, a lot worse. Have you read your Bible? And we're still, well, you'll see her video is like, I just think we need a break. This is so stressful. Yeah, with fake assassinations, the obvious false flags that have been in front of our face they don't even bother to hide it now. And a lot of my friends are acting as if we got all the time in the world. Well, because I teach the whole thing doesn't wrap up till 2046 doesn't mean that we're not going to be going for our, getting much worse. Our government's broke and people think it's going to be helped. Let's just look at some of it. Maybe I'm just, maybe it's nothing, but we'll start with the poison. Start with that, you know. So women poison people, men murder people. I'm only trying to say our hearts are all desperately wicked. Now we've lost the culture war. The people on the wide road and the people that don't care, they're all on the same road, really. They're listening to women that, they've been held down and hurt worse than Hispanics, worse than Native Americans, worse than blacks. I allegedly worse than the Irish before they formed mafias. I guess they were the Japanese and the Chinese, let's don't forget about them. They addicted the Chinese to drugs. They called it a century of shame. information about this poison is background. She's thought to have been born in Palermo. It's a nice, of course it's a star fort. Poisoning with an arsenic concoction of her own invention. She died July 12th, 1663. It doesn't say. We're to assume Gregorian unless it adds something, I think. So there's a murderer. Look at she's the big murderer. And of course, they lived in Star Force. Things were going bad at the end of that 1,000 years. What's this? Oh, whoa. That's kind of, sorry about that. Was kind of like PG 15, right? So how many people did she kill? Well, I guess she's convicted of murdering, her father and her two brothers, but they think she tested it. Can't prove it, but they think she tested it. So anyway, there's that. I just saw the Bowden fell because there was this whole page of like killer women, and I'm just like, well, pick one. So I did. The Bodenfeld Day Black Widows. It sounded interesting. I, it was a recent one. Okay. German serial killer. So when I say women, you say fight, women, fight, fight. No, I'm just kidding. That's like a cheerleader. I'm talking about worldwide. All of our hearts, uh, and desperately wicked. And all of us have, according to the Bible, we are striving because there's still sin in us that we have to crucify daily. It's a daily thing. It just turns out to be some former prostitute, older lady, right? Because this is 94. So she was bringing in people, and I just it's like, don't they put their? I mean, we know Thomas Crooks's name, and excuse me, I got a cough. See how it's all initials? Her boyfriend, her assistant, Sigmund Est. What is that? Okay, well, it's not Sigmund Freud. Lydia L. We don't know. And their victims, Ludwig G. William S. But I thought this one, Wilhelm was a master mason. They don't tell us his name, but I guess if you knew Saarland, well, there doesn't look like it's very populated. You can go there. Hey, Wilhelm S. the master mason. Do you know him? Yeah. He has been poisoned though now for going on 40 years. That was fun. I was okay. It looked like I was watching a movie and I had listened to some Jackson Brown while I was working on my pull ups. Let's see that. Ancient. Is that going to get us anything? Or maybe if I spelled it right. I know how to spell ancient. My wife didn't even put an N in it. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to show this thing here. Bear with me now. You know the drill. We're gonna get legal because I got copyright strikes. I got medical warnings. Look at that. Man, I'm so glad. Don't they love us so much that they let us do this? This is the number one. 4 months. 4 months. See, I told you it's all. Well, that's not about poison. The poison was 5 years ago. Oh, okay. That's misreading. So let's hear the cult. Cult of Mithras. Nah. And we went Aquatafina. Good thing I remember how to spell that. Not like it's spelling something really crazy. Have you heard about this? The beautiful death? That's okay, 10 months ago. 10 months ago, 2 years ago. Well, it's just showed up with me. Here's a short one.
In the shadowed alleys of 17th century Italy, whispers of Aqua Tofana echoed like a sinister hymn. Disguised as a remedy for the lovelorn, it
What?
was the clandestine creation of Julia Tofana, a woman with secrets as potent as the poison she brewed.
Ooh.
Julia and her daughter operated in the shadows for years, selling their sadistic wares under the guise of a harmless beauty product.
Huh.
Desperate souls sought out the potion maker, begging for relief from their tormentors, who were often their husbands or rivals. With a bright and pitying smile that concealed her malevolence.
Let's look at another one because I have a feeling that this one seems just overly dramatic. Murder makeup. Oh, so look at everybody's getting in on it. You think that she's like, "Hey, look at me. I'm a tattooed girl and I it's the same
Julia
picture."
Tofana was a widowmaker, in the literal sense, playing judge, jury, and executioner in an era where divorce was but a distant dream. With a higher body count than Vlad the Impaler, Tofana was one of the
Wow.
deadliest female criminals in history. Disguising a deadly drink requires some finesse. So how did Tofana hide her poison? Because it lacked any taste, smell, or color, kind of like a LaCroix, Aqua Tofana could be mixed with anything. But hopefully, not LaCroix. Despite an unassuming name disguised as a normal skin-covering cosmetic, this prosaic label hid a wicked blend of arsenic, lead, and belladonna. And no, we're not talking about Stevie Nicks' best album. Belladonna is better known as a deadly nightshade. So stop dragging our heart.
I think that the tomato is a nightshade. I also was getting into a little bit of the mysteries of alchemy. How long ago was it? John D. Those, his guys, we're going to get to this stuff and just see if it should be fun. And everybody can make up their own mind. I just think it's walking with the Lord right now is, like I said, there's going to be a time in the description when you look back and say, I had time to get ready. I could have, how many times have we thought I could have done more? But a little bit of alchemy, and they really took it serious. If people want to live forever, there's people right now doing the adrenochrome, torturing children to get it. In my world, that's my free speech. And you can warn people, and they'll go, yeah, man, that's terrible. Hey, man, have you heard Theron's going to go to the North Pole on a boat? 10 months ago.
Get this eternal essence so that you would achieve this immortal state of existence.
And it was from China that alchemical ideas and philosophy spread along the ancient trade routes into the heart of India. Nearly 2,000 years ago, alchemists in the far south of India, in Tamil Nadu, used gold or substances believed to be gold as part of a magical process towards creating immortality. One of the oldest prayers to come from this time says, "Gold born from fire, long-lived becomes he who wears it."
Well,
remarkably, the process devised by the ancient Indian alchemists has continued.
This guy is an expert.
And what he did in the 1500s was to combine alchemy, astrology, and medicine in the service of medicine, making drugs. And that became known as iatrochemistry. So in other words...
Okay. All right. We're going to come back and watch a little bit more of this. But the big takeaway, and, there's people coming and going. they are being pharmaceutically controlled. I am not. Except for probably for what I breathe, and I don't drink there or eat there. But you can't, that non-organic, organic food, you hear bad things about it, but you try to do your best and, try to eat as little as possible. Not a lot of people are into that right now, but they will be. And did you hear what they were studying with alchemy with all of those years? And then what happens after the 1,000 years? There's the reaping. And again, a straggling group of a remnant, or like fugitives. It says, here we are. And somehow Satan's loosed, and he has minions, and he has people that, excuse my language, but damn if they didn't write the King James Version and have John D. and that guy, his buddy Elliot, working on it, and they were into alchemy, poisoning, and we just heard that it was all about drugging and their secret messages. They all did it. We know it, and yet we eat their food. And we love a little Dr. Pepper every now and then, man. That's my thing. Everybody knows I'm the Dr. Pepper boy. I only have a couple a day. That's poison. And you grow up, you have kids, they watch you drink the poison. It's for men and women. Do you understand that the alchemy world, the spiritual world, RJ always says we've got to stop underestimating Satan. We've got to stop underestimating the whole spirit world, their principality and powers. When it took Michael 3 weeks to fight his way to give Daniel a message, the veil's being lifted. Don't worry, we got it. Check me later. And they got it. They got it.
Words, instead of trying to make gold or the elixir of life, he used his knowledge and he used the alchemical manipulations, the distillation and all the rest. He used that in making drugs.
His cures.
You know what one of their first big one was? Because I don't know if we can't go through this whole film. It's an hour, darn near 50 minutes. Distilled spirits, hard liquor. That was their first one, and they controlled man.
Became famous across Europe. He treated epilepsy as a disease instead of as a form of madness. He was the first to diagnose syphilis and treated it with a compound of mercury, which was still being prescribed.
Well, how about that? Where do you think he read it? Where do you think he read it? He got access to these old books.
Pictures, for instance, you see the two marrying, the two coming together, the conjunction of both.
It's that chemical wedding of the Rosicrucians. They talk about it. They don't even try to hide it. Their chemical wedding.
Gives you the Philosopher's Stone, which is perfection. Now, the colors they were observing were as follows, and they became very significant. Black was the lowest of the colors. That's death. The next color was white, and then the final color was red.
Alchemy, I think, has a remarkably consistent set.
Before long, he was pressed for results and resorted to his old trickery.
Oh, just
went to the Mecca of alchemy, which was Rudolf II in Prague. Rudolf II was interested in all aspects of alchemy, the metaphysical and the spiritual side, but also the side that would give him money, the making of gold. John Dee and Edward Kelly were two of many, many alchemists who ended up in that court. And of course, gold was never made. Many, of course, thought that they had made gold. At other times, of course, it was complete fraud.
Edward Kelly had already been caught out in England for producing fake coins and had been imprisoned and tortured there. But he managed to charm and trick himself into Rudolph's favor, being knighted and given scope to...
the queen let him go finally because of the astrology. She was his go-to in King James, and somehow they still talk about him and his monad today.
Provide Rudolph with the much-promised gold. Before long, he was pressed for results and resorted to his old trickery.
So, basically their story is nothing to see here. Look at this girl. She's in love, I think. It makes it seem like they're the good guys. Kinda.
That by the 1730s, it's being laughed at. By the 1740s, it's dead.
Alchemy had fallen into disuse, really, for the last 300 years. No one really understood the symbols, and it was generally dismissed as a bunch of people trying to take a quick cut of getting rich and transforming lead into gold. In other words, it was understood wholly in outer terms and laughed at, really.
Well, they're not laughing now when they're doing CERN. Why do you think they're trying to? They want to test all the elements. They want to live forever. Now, what I can do to show you that, and this is what you call speculation. While I am talking, I was right-clicking. I was selecting a new tab. I'm pulling up the Bible. I'm not worried because Genesis is the first book. That's where we're going. The 322, everything from the skull and bones, the 322, it's everything. John D. Edward Kelly wrote the Bible. Look, now I'm going to click back on me, go to the sharing of the screen, show you the Genesis chapter 3, the verse 22. 322. What is it? It's their goal for life. They think it's like building the Tower of Babel. Live on adrenochrome and whatever else they have until the hydrogen collider finds the blood or the water that Jesus shed on the cross. And then they can simulate it and live forever. Genesis 3:22. Then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. And that is what, when you don't want to die more than anything in the world, and it's a very narrow road. And we're supposed, I hope I don't get blotted out of the book of life, That's what people should be thinking. But it's just fun because we're under a lot of stress right now. So, and Nebuchadnezzar did get long fingernails, acted like a beast, ate grass, and now I've been reading this for 5 decades, and whenever I do it, and I'm amazed by it, and I think about it, it's not. I don't know anybody that ever thought, "Oh, he's turning into a werewolf." People like myself and others have always marveled at what the ancients put up with in their kings. He was born to be their king, and if he was acting like a beast, well, he put me in charge to run it until he's not acting like a beast. That's the amazing thing. There were other kings that got leprosy. Other kings changed their religion, and they kind of went, oh, okay. It was, and God wanted that type of loyalty to his law, but they wanted Saul. Okay, so I'm not going to be harsh on Kelly. I don't believe women should be preaching and teaching like she does. And I think that times are tough, so there's time to put out the videos, and probably times are tough for everyone right now. Let's just listen. RJ is the best. He's the finest man, an example of repenting that I know.
Of both the books of Daniel and Jeremiah actually became a werewolf at one point. Harriet was the first vampire. In the comment
What?
section, there's on the last video that I did, which just explored some claims that Judas Iscariot was the first vampire.
Oh,
In the comment section there, someone reminded me of the fact that many people believe that King Nebuchadnezzar of both the books of Daniel and Jeremiah actually became a werewolf at one point. So, you know what? This is something that is going to be.
and you know what? There's going to be people that see this and go like, "Why not? Why not?" I'll dwell on that, and yeah, instead of that, it doesn't. Where does this werewolves in the Bible thing come from? That, of course, that's not stopping anybody. The good Christians now that Enoch is out and loose, we're taking all comers, man, and anything can be scripture from the H.G. Wells, Jules Verne. Well, he wrote that, and maybe he knew something about that being the camp of the saints being at the North Pole on the globe that he was talking about. Vampires and werewolves. Oh, I was supposed to be nice. I'm going to be nicer right now.
A little bit lighter. I always think it's funny when I say that things like vampires and werewolves are lighter. I don't mean lighter in mood, but I just mean you don't have to quite think so much about it. And I also think that they're not quite as controversial as some of the stuff that I talk about. So for me, it's a bit of a break. So let's take this break and let's explore the claim that Nebuchadnezzar was a werewolf. So for those of you who aren't really sure where this is coming from, we're going to start in the book of Daniel, and I'm going to read chapter 4.
Are you going to use the King James?
Nebuchadnezzar, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. Peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show the signs and wonders that the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion endures from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospering in my palace. I saw a dream that made me afraid. As I lay in bed, the fancies and the visions in my head alarmed me. So I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers came in, and I told them the dream, but they could not make known to me its interpretation. At last Daniel came in before me, he who was named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And I told him the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too difficult for you, tell me the visions of my dream that I saw and their interpretation. The visions of my head as I lay in bed were these. I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it.
Bound with the rod of iron.
I saw the visions of my head as I lay in bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. He proclaimed aloud and said thus, chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him, and let 7 periods of time pass over him. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and you, O Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you.
She's going to talk about
Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was dismayed for a while, and his thoughts alarmed him. The king answered and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation alarm you. Belteshazzar answered and said, My lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation for your enemies. The tree you saw, which grew and became strong, so that its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth, whose leaves were beautiful and its fruit abundant, and in which was food for all, under which beasts of the field found shade, and in whose branches the birds of the heavens lived. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. Your greatness has grown and reaches to heaven, and your dominion to the ends of the earth. And because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field, and let him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 periods of time pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king. It is a decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king, that you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall...
Okay, now, if you're anything, what I hope you're doing, what I'm doing, I'm waiting for her to say something like, and then once, and then when it's a full moon, boy, watch out. The king is going to go crazy, man. That's not in here. I've read this a number of times, but so don't hold your breath. It's not in here.
Shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and you shall be wet with the dew of heaven, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will.
Okay, so Elyon, the Most High is making this is his deal. This is turning point in history time. Hands on. And it's going to be that because this is a decree. It's of the Most High. He sent the watchers, but he's saying this is what's going to happen. And then when he comes to his senses, the most powerful king, who really doesn't even have to show up to work if he doesn't want to, does show up to work and says, boys, there's a new God, and it's the God of the Hebrews, the God of Daniel. I've been thinking about it. That's closer than when the full moon comes out, I'm going to start eating people.
And as it was commanded to leave the stump of the roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be confirmed for you from the time that you know that heaven rules. Therefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by practicing righteousness, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the oppressed, that there may perhaps be a lengthening of your prosperity. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon.
Wow.
And the king answered and said, Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty? While the words were still in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven. O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall be made to eat grass like an ox. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Immediately the word was fulfilled again.
Now, is there any room in here for the end is written from the beginning? This isn't like, oh no, and now, wow, what a surprise. What's God going to do? Nebuchadnezzar became a werewolf. Oh my goodness. Please, please don't tell me you're there. This is the Bible. We know what it says. He was driven among men because he's going to end up being like, wow, I'm in charge of the largest kingdom at the time, and I'm saying, let's go, Daniel, let's go. Hey, and if anybody asks, maybe some of my relatives will rebuild your temple because we're down. He's going to say, everybody here, the God of Daniel is the Most High God. That's what the Bible's teaching. Anything else, it's like they don't even know the difference between amillennial preterism and post-mill. They think the golden age past is preterism, and you try to tell them, and they go like, why do you care so much about it? Can't you just lighten up? We're going to talk about vampires or mermaids.
Against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from among men and ate grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like birds' claws. At the end of the days, Nebuchadnezzar lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me, and I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand, or say to him, What have you done? At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor returned to me. My counselors and my lords sought me, and I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right, and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble.
Now, the Bible just expressed it clearly. And the next thing that she shows, I didn't pick this. He's going to say, maybe that's what Nebuchadnezzar looked like. He suddenly got a werewolf face and horns, because it says he got, his fingernails grew long that were like birds. Well, those sure look like birds. The Bible's enough, and it's enough to warn us. We should be taking it more serious. There's nothing coming out of these other things except, it's not only that, boy, they haven't had time to touch on the Trinity. They don't even want to touch. They only are in love with Enoch and the crazy. They don't want to make it work. I haven't heard it, but let's see it together.
Just a couple of months ago, I had the privilege of going to Sight and Sound in Lancaster, PA, to see Daniel. And what it is a show that goes through the entire book of Daniel. And I remember when it did this part of King Nebuchadnezzar going insane and going out into the forest. And I remember that even in that show, there was a physical transformation of King Nebuchadnezzar. I know that so many people think that it was just a mental change in him. And yes, certainly his hair grew long and his nails grew long to a claw-like state. But I remember seeing in the show, it was a pretty horrific transformation on the outside too that you were able to see.
Okay.
And so I was able to really understand why so many people can look at this account and think,
well, if they're looking, but not if they're reading the Bible, though. They would have to have seen your show and now hear you describe it and show this picture and go and hear that, like, many people have said that. Has anybody ever heard in their algorithm come up before 2 days, the vampires and the werewolves in 2 days? And now, and at both times, many people have really, or somebody, a sock puppet. Isn't that what they call those paid government trolls?
Wow, was Nebuchadnezzar actually a werewolf? So as a summary of what I just read to you from Daniel 4, King Nebuchadnezzar, he was very, very prideful. And as a punishment for his pride, God set it upon him that he was going to have the mind of a beast, and he was going to live among the beasts out in the wild, eat grass. And this was going to happen to him for 7 years. And that is exactly what the book of Daniel tells us happened. He had a dream. Belteshazzar, or Daniel, interpreted the dream, told him this was going to happen. And indeed, 12 months after having the dream, this is exactly what happened to him. So let's explore a little bit about this story.
Yeah, let's find the werewolf.
Here is an article called The Mesopotamian King Who Suffered from Lycanthropy.
Oh, they do have
now,
an article.
First
maybe.
of all, I'm going to just go over the difference between what most people think of as lycanthropy. Okay, when I say most people, I'm going to say most people who are in the truther movement.
Wow.
Most people who watch my videos. If you hear screaming, it is my neighbors outside. Their children are outside screaming and doing I don't know what. But anyway, most people in the truther community, when they hear the word lycanthrope or lycanthropy, they think of werewolves. Whereas in the psychological community, lycanthropy.
Yeah, most people that They learned it from Harry Potter.
Is a condition where people mentally believe that they are animals and that they are not specifically these animals. So that's a very important distinction to make. And we'll explore a little bit about lycanthropy also in this video. But this is just a short little article that I found. It says, in legend, lycanthropy is a condition in which a human being is magically transformed into a wolf. In medical and psychological terms, lycanthropy describes a delusional state during which sufferers believe they have taken on lupine characteristics.
Okay, what does this have to do with Nebuchadnezzar? We're to believe that this really did happen to him because it's what God wanted to happen.
Lupine means wolf, while retaining vestiges of human consciousness. Some believe that King Nebuchadnezzar II of the Mesopotamian capital Babylon suffered from lycanthropy. So
Why?
it tells us that King Nebuchadnezzar II was the second
Yeah, man, you got to be kidding me. This is your argument? Somebody just says it, not using the Bible, and says, well, maybe he's a werewolf, when the Bible doesn't describe anything like werewolf. And somebody else says, maybe he turned into a wolf, a real wolf, a werewolf, magical werewolf, not just a wolf. He turned back into a human. The Bible said it was because God, he'd learned his lesson that the Most High is the Most High, and he's going to tell it to the world. But done being a wolf, she's going to have to do better. We can't listen to this. Oh, you got to get off the classroom, because that's just Britannica. Okay, you got anything? Oh, European. So you got the one article that just is made it up.
And take a look at what Nebuchadnezzar was eating while he was in the fields. It will tell you that he ate grass like an ox. Okay, so we know that he was not eating the things that werewolves typically do. So I think that's something important to remember.
Right, because
he
he's not a
also did
werewolf.
not
He wasn't a
return
werewolf.
to human form by day. He was in that state for 7 years. So I'm assuming 24 hours a day for 7 years. He was in that beast-like condition. So let's just continue. Some werewolves change shape at will. Others, in whom the condition is hereditary or acquired by having been bitten by a werewolf, change shape involuntarily under the influence of a full moon. If he is wounded in wolf form, the wounds will show in his human form and may lead to his detection. Belief in werewolves is found throughout the world. The psychiatric condition in which a person believes he is a wolf is called.
You got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Okay.
Who I think most of you know I don't agree with a lot of the time, but I found this article interesting, so we'll share just a little bit. History, including the history in the Bible's Old Testament and the annals of modern medicine, record people who sincerely thought they became animals, and that would certainly seem like King Nebuchadnezzar, taking its name from the cursed Lycaon.
Look at that. Even the answer is in Genesis is saying that Nebuchadnezzar suffered what we would consider a mental breakdown, behaving and being treated as a beast until he came to know. Okay, well, how would he come to know if he wasn't thinking about it? If you're acting like a beast, you just all of a sudden, or was he, he didn't care. He was only even answers in Genesis. Wow. Well, I'm going to have to say, you know what? I'm going to do church in the morning, and people are going to believe the craziest things, about, what we've known as demons all our life. Say it with enough enthusiasm and get the itchy ear crowd who will hop from anything to anything. And next thing you know, you can get a little bit of a move on Nephilim or clowns, and then that morphed into, he's like Shelley. He's an expert now on Golden Age past, although he wasn't a flat earther until he became, he was practically forced to be, when everybody that is Golden Age past is pretty much flat earth. So do it. If that's your thing, maybe Nebuchadnezzar was a werewolf, and the Bible's just throwing it out there, and maybe it was close enough because, we just can't know anything for sure. So let's lighten it up and talk about vampires and werewolves. Hopefully this will be the last time, unless we're hashing this particular episode out, which we might not be done with if I talk to RJ about it. In the meantime, we'll all remember it's a flat earth nation, because the golden age is past. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else, because we're 1, called, 2, chosen, 3, being faithful in proving that we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame. And that usually means